to John chapter 9. Let's talk about one of the examples of a healing and how the healing drew people. Because it's interesting that in today's society, people will say to you every day, I'd rather see a sermon than hear a sermon. I want to see the proof that's in the pudding. See, not only do I want to hear you make a statement, but I want to see you live the statement. You know, we live in the 21st century. And something about us in the 21st century, we can't believe anything we can't see. And so even 2,000 years ago, people in authority had the same problem. As a matter of fact, they had a greater problem. Because if they didn't believe in God, they couldn't understand the healing that God gave. So look at verse 23, I believe it is. And I'm going to read this from the Old King James because the verbiage is what I want us to hear. From the Old King James, chapter 9 of John, starting at verse 23. Of course, I want you to understand the backdrop to this is that Jesus has healed a man who was blind from birth. And that man, after being healed, has gone and told everybody that he met a man that opened his eyes. You remember the story? When he looked, he said, people look like trees. I never understood how he knew what trees look like. But people look like trees. And he went and told everyone he came in contact with that there's a man that healed my sight. So now we pick this up in verse 23. Therefore said his parents, he is of age, ask him. What's important about that statement is that the parents are afraid. Because the parents were asked, what happened to your son? And they were afraid to stand in a public place, and talk about Jesus healing their son. I'm good. Verse 24. Then again called they the man that was blind. Say was blind. Was blind. And said unto him, give God the praise. All right. We know that this man is a sinner, talking about Jesus. And he answered and said, whether he be a sinner or no, I know not. One thing I know, that whereas I was blind, now I see. Then said they to him again, what did he to thee? What did he do to you? How opened he thine eyes? And he answered them, I have told you already, and you did not hear. Wherefore would you hear it again? Will you also be his disciples? Wait a minute now. He's being asked to testify, and his only concern is, I'm telling you this for a reason. Are you going to be his disciple? Now, of course, they had a problem. Then they reviled him. They scorned him. They said nasty stuff to him. One of the verses says they even cursed at him. And they said, thou art his disciple? See, we are Moses' disciple. We know that God spoke unto Moses. As for this fellow, we know not from whence he is. I got you through all of that just to hear these last two verses. The man answered and said unto them, why, hearing is a marvelous thing. This is a marvelous thing. That you know not from whence he is, and yet he opened mine eyes. Now we know that God heareth not sinners. Hold on. So what he's saying is, this is miraculous. This is incredible. That not only is this someone we don't know, but that he did this for me. He opened my eyes. I can see. We know, and all we know that's common is, God does not hear from sinners. So we don't know where he came from, but we know first he's not a sinner. Because God doesn't hear from sinners.
Come on now.
So what we got to understand is that even though he was not the leader, even though he was not the guy in charge, he had the wisdom to identify that this healing is something special. Not only do I see, but the man that created this miracle must be righteous. Last line. But if any man be a worshiper of God and do his will, him God hears.